70,000 thoughts a day, but you only know 5.
Humans are about to go on the ride of their lives, okay? We're about to be catapulted straight up. Okay. Um Now today I want to talk about something that I really need you to start paying attention to, because once I start bringing all of this stuff up, you'll be able to start seeing the world a little bit differently. Okay. So you'll be able to start making some sense out of what you're seeing. Okay. Um, I want you to notice something, which I know that you're already noticing. Think about the last time that something happened faster than you actually expected. Not shockingly so, not overwhelming. I mean, just throughout your day, like when you order something from Amazon and it's like 4 hours later, like, "Oh, wow, that was fast," right? Um, because if you're being honest with yourself, that's happening so often that we are now just considering that the norm, right? We're not really too shocked anymore. Like, wow, that was fast. I mean, we're coming to expect that, right? Things move faster, situations escalate faster, opportunities appear and disappear faster, and consequences land faster. Everything feels like it's speeding up, right? And most people want to point at technology and they say that's why, right? The internet, social media, smartphones, and now we have AI. And that's got to be what's doing it, right? We're just experiencing time differently, right? Well, by the end of this, you're going to see, I hope you're going to see something different if I'm able to connect these dots. Technology didn't cause this compression that we are experiencing, okay? Um, let's zoom all the way out for a bit, okay? For roughly 200,000 years, human life barely changed, right? And humans were running on the first operating system, OS 1, and we ran on that operating system for over 200,000 years. And that's one of the reasons why it's so ingrained in us. That was the longest standing operating system that we ran on. Okay, it took us longer to move through OS 1 than any of the operating systems that followed. Okay, so for 200,000 years, the space between shifts in how humans lived, how they ate, how they traveled, how they communicated, how they organized themselves was measured in thousands of years, okay? Thousands of years between meaningful shifts. Then something started changing. The space between these shifts started compressing, okay? Right? What was taking hundreds of thousands of years was taking only thousands of years, and then thousands of years turned into hundreds of years, and I think you get the point, right? The entire arc of the human technological development, from the first tool to the first smartphone, took 200,000 years, right? But then look at the development from the first smartphone to AI, and that took less than 20 years. That is not a straight line of progress, okay? That is an acceleration curve, and acceleration curves have a shape. Humans are about to go on the ride of their lives, okay? We're about to be catapulted straight up. This is the first time in human history that we are experiencing change in the way that we are, okay? With the compression that's happening right now, we are losing all of the buffers in our reality, okay? And we're going to talk about that. But let's just really quick, let's talk about communication. This is one of the most visible symptoms, okay? Think about a message, right? A letter, a handwritten letter with one of those quill pens, right? It took forever to write it out, and then it got delivered on horseback, right? And that could take months. And then a message was carried by railroads, and that took days. And then a message was sent by telegraph. That took hours. Then a message was sent by telephone. That took minutes. And then we have email that took seconds. And now we have text messages that are near instant, right? That entire arc from months to instant compressed into roughly 150 years. But here is what a lot of people are missing about this. It wasn't just the speed of the message that changed. It was the speed of everything the message set into motion. Okay. A business decision that once took months to communicate and evaluate and respond to now takes minutes. A social dynamic that took years to shift now takes days. A cultural moment that once took decades to become a historical fact now take hours to be processed, reacted to, archived, and replaced by the next one. So the message got faster, and everything downstream of the message went with it, basically. Okay. And then when we look at information, okay, the compression of knowledge. For most of human history, knowledge was scarce, not because humans weren't producing it, but because the space between its creation and its distribution was enormous. A discovery made in one part of the world might take decades to reach another part, right? A book written in one century might not be widely read until the next. And then came the printing press, right? And that compressed the space dramatically. Suddenly, ideas that once took generations to spread could travel across a continent in years. Well, the internet has compressed that to just about zero, right? A discovery made in a laboratory on one side of the world can basically be in the hands of a researcher on the other side of the world before the day is over, right? A finding published in the morning can be cited, debated, challenged, and talked about that afternoon. So the thing about compressing the space between knowledge creation and knowledge distribution has gone to about a zero. And so not only did it compress the distribution of knowledge, but it compressed the space between being wrong and finding out you were wrong. Every framework, every conclusion, every model that depended on slow movement of information to protect it from any contradiction is now exposed to contradicting data at the speed of the internet. And this is not comfortable for systems built to move slowly. And it's one of the primary reasons the old frameworks are beginning to crack, and we're seeing it in real time. Okay. Now, touching on to culture, there was a time when a culture trend took generations to fully emerge, peak, and fade. Fashion moved in decades. Music moved in decades. Social values moved in decades. The space between one dominant cultural movement and the next was wide enough that people had time to fully inhabit one before the next arrived. Now, a trend can be born, it can peak, become iconic, become nostalgic, and be revived like all within a year. One moment bleeds into the next before the previous one has even been fully realized. And everyone's feeling this, okay? They feel the disorientation of a cultural landscape that moves too fast to actually orientate with. They feel the exhaustion of trying to keep up with the pace that has no natural resting point. The exhaustion is real, okay? So fast that things aren't like isolated incidents anymore where we have space between them so that we can fully process them and like register them as memories, right? Because think about your memory. Like think about trying to remember when something happened in the last few years. To most of us, it's a blur. Like, I can't even tell you, what I did 3 months ago, where previously in the past, like, 5, 10 years ago, if we were to talk and I had to reference things from the past, it was easier to reference things because we had like these mile markers because, you know, there was like a memory and then there was space between our memories and that's all gone now. And this is the first time in human history that we're experiencing this. And that's another reason that people are feeling all of this anxiety and all of this stress. It's because these are symptoms of the compression that they're feeling. They're not able to step outside of that compression to view it clearly. It's just everything's coming at them. And just to touch on another sector, like industry leaders, for example, there was a time when an industry, once it was fully established, could you could count on it for decades for stability. But that's all changing now, right? Think about the television industry that dominated home entertainment for decades. The music industry dominated audio distribution for generations. The space between the emergence of a dominant industry and its disruption used to be measured in decades. Now it's measured in years and sometimes months. So, entire business models that took decades to build are becoming obsolete in years. Okay. Companies that dominated their category for generations are being replaced by companies that didn't even exist a couple years ago. The space between establishment and, and disruption of it has compressed so dramatically that industries can no longer assume the stability that they once planned around. And the businesses that are still operating in OS2 and OS3 framework, still waiting for institutional permission, still measuring success by last quarter's output, are the ones that are experiencing the most disorientation because their frameworks were built for a pace of change that no longer exists. Okay. And here's the most important thing I want you to take from this episode right now. Most people are attributing everything I just described to technology, okay? People always describe when life was simpler, right? Before all of these technologies. And so they are assuming that the internet made culture faster, that social media made information faster, that smartphones made communication faster. But I want you to notice something, okay? Every single example of compression that we just walked through across all of human history was already in motion before the technology that seems to explain it arrived, okay? The agricultural revolution wasn't caused by a tool. The tool was what the shift in human consciousness produced, okay? The internet didn't cause the information age, okay? It was the information age that produced the internet. So when you look at things through the fourth OS lens, you'll see that what most people are viewing as cause is not cause, it's an effect from the cause. And we are the cause, okay? Our unawareness is the cause. And once you see the compression at that level and you look at it through the macro sweep of human history down to the speed of your own daily experiences, you can't unsee it, okay? And the important question becomes unavoidable. If the space between everything is shrinking, if the buffer between cause and effect is completing, if the old frameworks were built for a world with more lag time, more space, more distance between action and consequence, what happens to those frameworks as the space closes? What happens to the conclusions that were drawn from inside systems that depended on the buffer to stay coherent? What happens to the people still navigating from those old frameworks in a world that is moving too fast for those frameworks to accurately interpret? That is exactly where we're going.
70,000 thoughts a day, but you only know 5. The other 95% is running your life. You think you're in the driver's seat, but baby, who's at the wheel? The program's been the author of everything you feel. You planted seeds and fog so thick you couldn't see the ground, but the buffer's getting thin now and the harvest is coming around. What you put in the dark is all coming to the light. The physics don't negotiate, it don't care if you're right. The buffer's done, the buffer's done. What you are inside is what you're running from. The buffer's done, no more delay. What you create in the dark is on its way. No more hiding, no more lag. Consciousness is catching up, that's a fact. Oh, the buffer's done, the buffer's done. Time to meet yourself, ready or not, here it comes. OS1 just tried to survive, OS2 made the rules, OS3 chased the trophy, and OS4 need you to approve. But there's a fifth door opening. Nobody mapped this place, where the inside and the outside finally share the same space. Helen Keller at the pump, the water always ran. You just couldn't feel your hands until the physics said now's the plan. AI didn't flip the switch flipped and came the machine. Consciousness hit critical mass and built the thing to make you see. The buffer's done, the buffer's done. What you are inside is what you're running from. The buffer's done, no more delay. What you create in the dark is on its way. No more hiding, no more lag. Consciousness is catching up, that's a fact. Oh, the buffer's done, the buffer's done. Time to meet yourself, ready or not, here it comes. Unawareness wrote the code. Awareness is the one who gets to choose. First you observe,